So, we are now here, back downtown, and we've been up here when we had the view over the roof of the buildings of the old quarters, and we went down, and we are now here in this big square. That square, Place in French, was called Place Sainte-Claire. Sainte-Claire is the name of a holy woman who is the holy patron of sisters, because there before used to be a monastery. That monastery was converted after the French Revolution into a cotton manufacturer, a huge cotton manufacturer. Let me show you the way it used to look like. See, this is the factory here, and this is the River Thue. We have here another picture, which is only from the 70s. So see how important buildings were inside the old quarter. And that cotton manufacture was really, really important. So instead of that square, here was before a huge cotton manufacturer. The factory employed up to 2,000 employees, and it was a royal manufacturer. Let me explain why it was called a royal manufacturer. Remember that Italy was not a state before 1861, so it was like a puzzle. Each pieces of the puzzle were the property of one of the powerful European families. And our Maison de Savoie would choose alliances, sometimes against France, sometimes with France, depending on the territories they expected to win. Of course, many times they were not on the winner's side, but on the loser's side. So when they were on the loser's side, this is when our territory was occupied. So our territory was occupied many times by the Swiss, by the Spanish, by the French, etc., depending on those alliances. Okay? But at the beginning of the 18th century, the Maison de Savoie chose an alliance with Austria. And they won that war. They won a new territory, which was the island of Sardinia in the sea, and that island was a kingdom. So from that time, the Maison de Savoie was no longer called Maison de Savoie, but they were called the Kingdom of Piedmont, which is the name of part of North Italy, and Sardinian. Okay, this is why our cotton manufacture here in Annecy was called a royal manufacture. But in 1860, the unification of Italy occurred. How did that happen? Well, very simple. You had the king of Piedmont-Sardinia, who was the leader of the unification of Italy. You have to imagine that all the pieces of the Italian puzzle were ready to unify, and the kingdom of Piedmont-Sardinia was a strong state, so they were the best to lead that unification. Okay? But the king of Piedmont-Sardinia needed help, because around Milano and Venezia, two big Italian cities, were still the Austrian troops. So he had tried many times to beat them, but without success. So he had to make a deal with France. The chief of France of that time was called Napoleon III. So he went to see Napoleon III, and they made an exchange. Napoleon III would help him to fight against the Austrian troops in northern Italy, and in exchange, the king of Piedmont-Sardinia would have to give him some territories. And the territories he chose to give to France are the two French departments of today called Savoie and Haute-Savoie. Remember the map I've shown you at the beginning of the tour. Okay, and this is how in 1860 Our city of Annecy, included in the department of Haute-Savoie, became French definitively, and this is how the state of Italy became, was born in 1861. Okay? As the city of Annecy became French, of course, the manufacturer did not have any work anymore, because it was a royal manufacturer, so they were sure to have enough work for everybody. But as we became French, they had to stop the activity. They survived until the middle of the 1950s, but then they have to close definitively. Okay? And after that, well, the city decided to build the buildings, the new buildings that you have around you. The idea was to build here a square that did not exist before inside the old quarter of Annecy, and also to build houses and buildings that could fit into the old quarter. If you look well, you would be able to see that you have arcades as well as in the old quarter. You have the same colors of the facade, and here it was not possible to build skyscrapers. You have to really fit inside the old quarter.